seen before, so welcome back to those and welcome to the new people. We started IL MathCom to be a virtual math community because Janine and I really felt like we wanted to share our joy and wonder of mathematics with the rest of Illinois, and as we found, with people from other states and even other countries have joined us on some of our calls. I'm Heather Brown. I work with the Illinois State Board of Education through ISU. Janine, do you want to wave and introduce yourself?
I'm Janine Shepard. I'm a math and science content specialist with Illinois State University and ISBE.
Yes. And so first, a little housekeeping. If you have not already turned on your camera, if you could please do so, it really helps us to have a fully authentic conversation. And why we will be completely encouraging you to talk, since most of us are in places where there's a lot of background noise, if you can mute yourself when you are not talking, that would be great. Both of these, like if you hover over your screen to the bottom left, there's the mute button and there's also the start video button. Lastly, as I've been asking, I think most of you have already done this, but if you have not, if you can change your name to be, by hovering over your picture and there's the 3 little dots, you can rename yourself so that we have your first name. That would be great. I love the people that logged in together and that you included everybody's name. That's perfect. If you do have cameras with multiple people, it is sometimes great so that we can see what's going on. Let's see. So before we start, I just want to say we will be sharing many resources. When we are sharing those resources, we will be putting them on our forum. So Janine and I will put those in the chat window for you so you can see them. Also, if you are on social media, you can tweet using hashtag ILMathCom, and then everyone will be able to see some of our great discussions. So the forum is, while we have the chat window open here, that's great, but the forum is where we will save things. This chat will disappear. It won't stay with the recording. And at the end of the day, we will link to our post survey, but I'm going to go ahead and give you all of those links right now. All right, so today, our usual format, we have an invited guest or teacher come on, and we did not have, an invited guest because I think both Janine and I had a lot to say about fluency. This was a topic that was requested by, at the end of our session, we'll ask you to do a post survey, which is already in the link, or already in the chat window there. And it was requested by people during those things. More than one person asked us to talk about fluency, or specifically somebody said Fluency Without Fear, since that is the article that we watched. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. I'm gonna share my screen. And we are gonna start by taking a moment. I want you to define fluency. If you have a piece of paper, I would love for you to just think about what fluency means to you.
Fluency means being flexible with.
Jackie, you are not on mute. I don't know if you know that.
I got it. Hold on.
You're fine.
Not doing this and driving, that's a bad idea.
Yeah, no, it's a bad idea. All right, then ink. If you have not, write down your ideas. I'll give you another like 30 seconds to think about, again, if you're just signing in, what does fluency mean to you? And then, because we don't have enough breakout rooms to have everybody do it, we can't really go into pairing, so we're going to go into sharing. Can you tell me, I went back to a full screen so that you can tell me and we can see each other. What does fluency mean to you? And go ahead, we checked all your microphones. So go ahead and you can unmute yourself and just tell us what you think of when you think of fluency.
Well, this is Leanne, and I think it's just really quick number sense.
Other people?
Being flexible with numbers. Using efficient strategies to problem solve.
I said understanding relationships between numbers and being able to use them back and forth.
Derek, you're still on mute. Were you trying to tell us?
This is Amber, and I think that consistency and accuracy come to mind.
I think it's the automaticity of number concepts.
I don't know how to spell automaticity. I tried to do it though. All right, I tried to write down some of your ideas while you were talking. I'm gonna go, anybody last minute? I can only see half of you. I really want to be able to see everybody. Anybody else has something to add? Okay, I think those are mainly the ideas that we usually hear. We hear about efficient strategies. Hold on, I know flexibility. How do you spell automaticity? Flexibility. Now which screen can you see? The wrong one, right?
We see your beautiful babies.
Okay, sorry. That was the wrong one. All right, so you see efficient strategies to problem solve, understanding relationships. I think these are all really great definitions of fluency. We're going to share a couple definitions of fluency from some of the resources that we like. The first being fluency from the Publisher's Criteria. This was out in 2012 by the authors of the Common Core. And they talked, the words they used were fluently. They talked about methods based on mathematical principles, not on mnemonics or tricks. And the idea, I think somebody kind of said this, the idea of working with flow without halting or stumbling, the idea of being quick and accurate. And then Principles to Action is a book that we suggested if you have it laying around. And I only say that because I know we actually, my husband's a teacher, and we actually have 2 copies like literally laying around. So this is their definition. There's a chapter or a section on building procedural fluency from conceptual understanding. So I just want to give you a second to read through that. So I really appreciate this definition. I like to think about flexibility of numbers, the idea to be able to, like it says, transfer this into contextual understanding. I think probably most of us have our own personal stories with regards to this, whether either we remember trying to memorize when we were younger ourselves, or we have our own children and we've seen them either struggle or succeed in this kind of, in this environment of trying to become fluent and trying to become fluent in whatever the teacher defines as fluent, right? So we all have our different definitions, but what does the teacher define? So we asked you to read Fluency Without Fear, and we want to see what your takeaways are from the article. So what I'm going to do is actually, because we have several people, we're going to have you go into 2 breakout rooms. First of all, can I see show of hands for the people who have their cameras on? Again, if you don't have your cameras on, please turn them on. How many of you finished reading, actually read the article, either now or at a different time? Okay, a little over half. So we're going to go ahead and split. I'm going to provide the link to the article in the chat window, so that way if you want to skim through it while we're having the discussion, you can. But we're going to break up for about 10 minutes and see how that goes. And we're just going to have, Janine's just going to randomly separate us into 2 groups. And so we'll have about 10 or 12 people in each group so that we can have a smaller group discussion just on things that, what your takeaways were from the article. That's it. That's the whole question. All right, Janine. Janine, go ahead. You can describe it.
Yeah, I'm gonna open the breakout rooms, and then you'll have a pop-up, a notification pop-up, and you just click OK, and it'll send you to your room. All right. Let me see what the progress is. Still have, and we're just waiting on a few people. Here we go. All right. So what were your big takeaways from reading the article? What were some of the thoughts you had as you were reading it? Favorite quotes, biggest shockers, any of those things?
This is Hillary. I have to say that there were no shocks in the article at all. I agree with what Joe was explaining fully. I do think it's important to remember it's not about speed. It's about building a set of multiple strategies that can be adjusted, and kids are able to figure out which strategy works best in each situation. I think that's real important, but I think sometimes we all go back to, we want kids to have that automaticity, and we think somewhere in our brains that we're going to get there with time tests and that kind of thing. But I think the research is showing us in a plentiful way that that's not the case.
Right. And then the question that I have is, how do we make this idea the pervasive idea in our schools? Because that's still not, this idea isn't being widely accepted yet. I'm getting some
I don't know.
small children sounds from someone. So don't be offended if I mute you, but I would love it if you'd chime into the conversation.
I think that's well, this is Ryan, by the way. We're on the iPhone / Ryan, Megan, Melissa, just because we do not have a camera on our other TV. But I think that the whole question that you posed is the question that is the $1 million answer, or is the $1 million question. Really looking at how do we change that, those traditional thoughts about time tests and moving toward, moving away from mnemonic devices, from memorization. Because we know that when we do those things and we start to come across higher level math practices or skills, students are struggling because they've relied on these mnemonics or these memorization strategies, and then they can't apply those strategies to new things. So I don't have the answer for you, but I definitely agree.
Yes. I'm so impressed by the mindsets that we have on the call today. Like, this is not the response we typically get when we're talking about fluency in public. Because Illinois is awesome.
It is. Hi, this is Jackie. Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay, sorry. Mine's just iPhone because I connected in the car.
No, that's fine.
But I know it is awesome. I'm not driving right now. But anyway, my comment about the article and the fluency and teaching it, I think the mindset thing is huge. I think if we can get teachers to believe that they can still do deep thinking without knowing their multiplication tables, and get them to actually believe that they can think about math concepts even though they still can't do quick multiplication or quick addition, that's the huge mind shift. Because that, I think the fluency will eventually come as they use it, but for some kids it takes a lot longer.
Absolutely. So being a little bit more generous with our expectations, maybe, like understanding that some students just need more time.
Yeah, and I think understanding that students can still understand conceptually what's going on in a math problem without knowing off the top of their head that 6 times 4 is whatever, that they can use their calculator and get that, but then they can still understand conceptually what is going on.
Right.
I agree with Mary. I think that's a real important concept, because if our kids just get stuck where they don't have speed, the interest level in math is not going to continue to grow, and then we're going to have a serious problem as they get older.
Yeah, my daughter would be a case study for this. Like, she has a super high IQ. She is super good at problem solving. She's excellent at math, but her processing speed is on the slower side. Like, we were concerned about dyslexia. So I had her a full child study done on her. And here, like in all these areas, she's so super high, and then her processing speed was so low. But that contributes to, like, she doesn't do well on rocket math tests, or some of the extra math that she does at home on the computer to try and build fluency. But man, she can do some serious problem solving. So I don't know, we have to be really careful that we're not damaging our students by showing them that they're always going to be the slowest on those time tests.
I just wanted to say I'm probably an outlier here, but in the fact that I don't teach elementary students, I teach adults, students who are trying to get their GED. So I constantly see those students that most of you probably have right now are coming to me when they're not succeeding in math. And so I'm getting those students, and I'm getting those students that are anxious about math and have a lot of problems with math, and they don't even want to breach the subject of times tables or any kind of repetition with math because it brings back such awful feelings. So I'm so interested to hear also, because generally students have high expectations for how fast they're going to get through their GED or how fast they're going to get through their material. And fluency is built over time, which is what I'm hearing from everybody. It's built over time, and 12 weeks is not enough time. So I'm interested to hear more about what this group has to say.
Absolutely. We're going to dive into some really fantastic strategies for building fluency here in a little bit that are pretty amazing. What else stood out to you? I was really shocked by, if Heather and I were in the same room, I'd probably get in trouble for this. But I was shocked by the Engage New York definition for fluency. It's probably like halfway through the article and indented. So it says students are expected to have speed and accuracy with simple calculations. Teachers structure class time and or homework time for students to memorize through repetition core functions such as multiplication tables so that they are more able to understand and manipulate more complex functions. So I read that and I'm like, I taught Engage New York. I used their curriculum for 3 years and really enjoyed it, right? It has great reviews from Ed Reports. It has some really wonderful elements. And then I read her, evaluating the statement, and she made some really good points regarding what they had to say.
This is Hillary and I.
Uh-huh.
I had 2 thoughts about what you just said. I've also used Engage New York as an extra resource. I think to provide, lots of good problem-solving opportunities, deep thinking opportunities.
Absolutely.
Kinds of questions where they have to collaborate and they have to try more than once. I'm thinking that while this quote may very well be accurate, I think it's also just like taken out of context and we're not thinking about it within the whole context and the whole part of Engage New York. And I'm not sure that's fair.
Good call. That is a good point. I think that they didn't do themselves justice, because they definitely are task-centered and spend a lot of time digging into the patterns and structure that can appear within one math problem. So you are absolutely right.
And at the risk of sounding like a negative outlier, I used to teach 5th grade, and I can tell you that kids get stuck if they're trying to manipulate mixed numbers and they don't know how to find a common denominator and make equivalent fractions, and they have no other strategies to call on. They hit a roadblock, and it's really hard to get past that. If we've only expected them to memorize and we haven't given them other strategies, we force them to get stuck. They have to be able, if we're not going to give them other strategies, they have to have that accurate recall. But we should be giving them other strategies.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the fluency without conceptual understanding is just as dangerous as not being fluent. It's
Totally
probably more
agree.
dangerous than not being fluent, right?
Totally agree.
All right. Heather said that they're ready to come back, so I'm going to close the breakout room and we're going to go back to whole session.
Welcome back. We missed you. Whoa. My screen just went black.
We picked up a few along the way.
Good. Awesome. Okay, so our takeaways, we talked about the same thing that we talked about when we defined fluency. The idea that our takeaways were kind of like based on reasoning. Jamie brought in a good point about the fact that whatever we as teachers value is if students are missing it, that's will give them anxiety. Did I say that right? Jamie, explain what you were saying again, that we have to keep in mind that by changing, we may be eliminating anxiety from some students, but we may actually be adding it to other students.
Yeah, no, I think you've captured it well. Just the students are very astute in seeing what teachers are valuing. And so if a child has a perceived gap in terms of what's being valued in the classroom and what they're good at, there will be anxiety always around that gap. And I'm not suggesting it's good or bad. It's just the gift of teaching is knowing where those anxieties are and giving the students the tools to work through them, which is why I like conceptual development, because we can empower kids to think more conceptually. Whereas if it's speed, that's something they may never improve because that's not the way their brain is organized. So.
That's good. Yeah, that's true. We have more control. Does somebody from your room want to talk, Janine?
Would anybody from my room like to share what we discussed? We had some really good conversation, I promise. They weren't this quiet.
Ours were pretty quiet, but they were good. All right. Do you want to summarize, Janine, or do you want us to move on? Was it basically the same things?
I would say so. That's fair to say, yeah.
Awesome. All right, so I actually have some slides. So Janine and I are going to kind of talk about some strategies that we've learned over the years, watching students or teaching students or having our own children. We have slides to go through, but some of the things are actually things that are in my room. So rather than going to the slide, I'm going to just kind of talk through what some of them are. So the first thing that we have is games. How many of you use games with your students to work on fact fluency?
All the time.
All the time. Awesome. So I'm going to give a few examples. I actually have 5 here. And then I would love it if you have more examples that we can kind of share it. Janine, are you in the forum? Can you kind of capture some of these games as we're talking about them?
Sure will.
That'd be awesome. All right. So my first game is the game Knockout. Has anybody seen this before? All right. This is actually, it is something you would have to purchase, although Janine thinks her husband could make it. But it is from, it's actually on YouCubed. I think she talks about this. But it's a game where you roll 3 dice. I'm not sure how much I can zoom in. You roll 3 dice. So your number is going to be between 1 and 18. And then you take that number. So let's say you got an 11. You can choose where to put those points. So you can either go all on 11, or you could do 5 and 6, or you could do 1, 2, 3, and 5. You can do any number of and they have marbles, or you could have colored dots or anything like this. You can't do, if you score 10, you can't do 5 and 5 in the same round, because the point is to freeze it. So your next round, you want to try to get the same number. And the reason it's called knockout is because the other person's point, if they get 1, as soon as they put their color down, yours gets knocked off. Does that make sense? A lot of people look confused.
It sounds similar to Bump.
To Bump. Tell me about Bump.
Same concept. There's so many different versions of it, multiplication, division, anything, even angles and, other more complex concepts. And you have 10 chips, I have 10 chips. I put mine down. You can knock me off or bump me unless I lock it in with 2 of my own.
Oh, well, it sounds exactly the same. So you're saying that you use it. Does your camera work? Do you have a way to explain how would you use this? Because this one is just with like dice. So I find what I like about this most is that it really, first of all, the students are adding 3 numbers. That's between, 3 and 18. So it's really kind of, they're practicing that constantly. But we're also asking them to break that number up. Mm-hmm. And in ways that are advantageous, right? Like, so if they already have a 7 and they want to get the other 7, they have to realize like what their number, if it's possible. And then there also comes a point where they have to realize that sometimes they don't have a number that works. And I think that's frustrating. Like if they get an 11, but there are no pairs that make 11, that they can't put it down. So how, I'm sorry, I don't know your name because your name says H. Nasso.
Oh, sorry. I'm Hillary and I changed my name. Sorry.
Okay. Hillary, can you explain to us, so if they don't roll the dice, what do they do instead?
They could pull cards. There's some versions that have cards. There's some versions that it's 3 dice instead of just 2. Or sometimes in the kindergarten level, it's just 1. It's as basic as subitizing all the way to, 4th and 5th grade concepts.
So do you have any, and I'm just asking because there are people who are on here who would love to do it. Do you have a link? Like I can provide a link to where you can purchase Knockout. Not that ISBE or ISU endorses purchasing products. But do you have a link where you can get some of those games, or is it something you kind of like made up? And I'm just asking because other people I'm sure would want to use it.
Oh, I for sure did not make it up. Teachers pay teachers. Am I allowed to say that?
You're allowed to say it. We don't have to agree with you, but yeah, you are allowed to say that.
You could just, you can, Games for Gains has a nice addition and subtraction of fractions version.
We'll look at it. I love it.
Most of which are free.
I love it. But it's definitely a game that you, like we said, you could kind of modify for it. From the same company on the backside, so it's like a delightful 2-sided board for us, is Muggins, which doesn't look, how many of you have seen this? Anybody? You have, yay. Have you seen the Knockout then? The person who said yes? Oh, so this is not new to you. Well, I still have some other ones coming. So
it's not new, but I've not used it in a classroom. I just happened to see it at a conference and see it being played.
This is great I feel like these are both great things for stations. When you have a kid that either, it's just a nice station to go to, right? Like you can play just for a little while, you can play a little longer. But Muggins, it's a similar game. You roll 3 dice. And when you roll them, you can add, subtract, multiply, or divide them in any order you want. And the numbers here are from 1 to 36. And again, like this, I think we can do similar things. 1 through 36. And if you get, there's a point system where it's not only advantageous to get obviously the more marbles you can get down is great, but if you get them in rows, so if you can get 3 in a row, you get more points than just 3 individuals. Does that make sense? Or 4, and more, even more for 4, and even more for 5. So you're really trying to get your kids when they, like if you have one that's a 20 and you have another one that's 32 and you roll 3 numbers, you're really trying to figure out, like, can I get a 19 or 21 out of there? Can I get whatever number I said here over there? Because those are really good. Those, again, are kind of asking our students to think flexibly about numbers. Anybody have something they want to compare to that? Rebecca, you just shared something with us. Tell us what that is.
The brother that worked was editor.
She found a link to Bump.
I found a link to Bump.
Yeah, but
it gave a generic description of Bump. It was also reminding me of one of Greg Tang's games, 10 Pin Limbo, where you roll 2 dice and you add those up, but then you're looking at a triangle that looks like bowling pins, and there are the numbers 1 through 10 on the triangle in each circle where a bowling pin would be, and then you cross off numbers that are equal to the sum that you made. But you can cross off numbers that are different as long as it's equal to the sum that you made. And then the person you're playing against is doing the same thing, and you're trying to have the least number of pins on your board till you run out.
Oh, that's cute.
So it's good for addition to 10 or 12, I should say.
I am getting all these links in the forum, so these will all be live there for you guys.
And the names of the games too?
Yes.
my next game is probably the least mathematical specifically, but I absolutely love this game. My daughter absolutely loves this game. Has anybody played Rat-a-tat-cat? So this one's more gamey. It doesn't feel as mathy, but it definitely has the idea of number sense. You get 4 cards, they're face down. You're allowed to look at 2, you're not allowed to look at them, and you're trying to get the lowest number. So and all the numbers are between 0 and 9. So 9 is the worst and 0 is the best. So as you're drawing, you have the 4 cards laying down. As you're drawing, you have to look, and if you have a 4, you have to see, do I want to replace either the ones I already know or even the mystery one, or do I want to throw it away? And it really kind of, it's interesting to see, you know, like, again, my daughter's in 2nd grade, so she's probably been playing it for 2 years. I think it's a good thing to start right around kindergarten. It really gets kids to see, like, she wanted to be really strict and she wanted to only accept 0s and 1s, but then somebody else would always finish before her, because you get to decide, one person they rat-a-tat-cat when they decide, they knock when they decide that they think they have the best score. And so it's just a kind of like a number sense game. All right. Next game, and I know you all have ideas for this. So tell me how you use dominoes in your class. No one uses dominoes in your class? Really?
Just kidding, I couldn't unmute.
Okay, awesome. Tell us how you use them.
Use them for addition, subtraction, fractions, supertizing. I mean, you name it, I'll think of a way to use it.
Yeah. Mary, are you trying to light up with us too? I just saw your thing light up.
We use the dominoes for a quick assessment to assess hierarchical inclusion, the embedded quantity. So they work in pairs. So one child will show one side of the domino, keeping the other side hidden. And they'll ask their partner, can you build that quantity with counters or whatever they may have? And when the child's built the quantity, they'll say domino changeo, and they switch the dominoes to the other side of the pips are showing. And the task is the child has to change their existing quantity to match the new quantity. And it allows the teacher to observe, do they push the existing quantity away and rebuild? Do they add on? So it's a very powerful assessment to see, are they inclusive thinkers? Because for those children that don't see that 2 is nested in the 6, when they're asked to change it, they'll push the 2 away and rebuild. If that's making any sense.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Do you guys hear that? I see lots of nodding. Anybody use dominoes different ways? We always played like matching, but instead like it's just called matching, right? What's the game called where you flip up the cards and you try to match them?
Memory?
Memory. We would play memory, and they had to match them, but they didn't have to look the same. They just had to have the same sum. Mm-hmm. So something like that, again, kind of practicing so that they can be similar. That was one thing. Or just, you know, trying to find them from there. All right, I have one more game, and then you guys can share any other ones. And
at the same point of your memory match, we played Go Fish, where they had them in front of them, and they had to have some or the same difference, and they had to go fish and make a set.
Oh, I like that. That's really similar. And but they were using dominoes to do it? Yeah, I like that. All right, the last one is, again, this is another one that's just a game I play with my daughter that I just made up. And the point that I'm trying to make here is a lot of these, the reason I showed the last couple is these are things that you probably have laying around, maybe at your house or not, maybe not. If any of you play cribbage, I'm not suggesting you use cribbage to teach fluency, although there is a lot of math in cribbage. But we actually just use the cribbage board. So we play subtraction cribbage, which again is a great stations game, where instead of playing war, we play like the old game of war, except whoever has the highest number subtracts from the lowest number. And we just use a regular deck of cards. We at home use the king and the queen and the jack as 11, 12, and 13, but you could certainly take those out or use a number set if you have number cards, which I think most of us do. But we use them to play subtraction cribbage. I love it when my kids ask questions. So my daughter asked, couldn't we play addition cribbage instead? And when I'm really tired and don't really want to play a game, we play addition cribbage, because addition cribbage only takes about 4 seconds, because as soon as subtraction cribbage, whoever has the most moves like the 2 pins if one has a 9 and one has a 7, right? Whoever had the most. But in addition cribbage, if one person has a 9 and one person has a 7, the person who won gets to move 16. So it's significantly faster game. My son asked her if she could play multiplication cribbage, and we realized that that would only involve 1 or 2 cards, probably only a couple of cards. All right, so tell me, those of you are already sharing, that's great. Who else has, those are all the games I have in front of me. Who else has games that they use with their kids for fluency, to help with number sense and fluency?
This is Hillary again. There's a game called Witzel. I don't have it in front of me, and nor do I know how to use my camera at this point. It's Witzle. They're cards, and the cards have a 3x3 array on it, and you have to manipulate the numbers. There's a lower level that's just addition and subtraction, and there's a higher level with all 4 operations, and you have to manipulate the numbers via the rows, the columns, and diagonals to make all of the sums 0 through 12, or all of the combinations to make 0 through 12. So it's flexible thinking, and it's building fluency, and decomposing and recomposing numbers.
Hillary, I think we're just going to have you do the talk next time. You have so many great ideas. I love it.
I'm just a kid at heart.
Yeah, I love it. Amber, were you just going to get something? Go ahead, show us.
So you guys might know about these, but these are just Tang Math. And so I got these at a conference as a kind of a giveaway thing, but I even use them. I teach adult students, higher level, and some of them are a little bit kiddie, but for you guys, that's great. And there's 2 different sets. And the ones that my students like the most are the Kakuma. I don't know if you guys have heard of Kakuma before. Let me grab them out of here. Sorry, I didn't prepare for this.
No, you're fine.
Kakuma is kind of like Sudoku. And so you have to find the sums. And there's like you have to find the 2 numbers that add up to one of the other numbers here. And there's an online version as well. You can look, it's on Greg Tang Math, and there's addition and the multiplication version. So there is a computer version of Kakuma as well. And then the other one, I have to see which one it is. There's one set that's for grades 3 through 5, and another set that's for K through 2. There are, is it Numtanga? Yeah. So I'm gonna see if you can see these. This might be kind of hard to see, but you, in Numtanga, they have to match the 2 representations. So this reminded me of the article that you guys put out about how the flashcards, so they have to match the 2 representations of a number. So for instance, this one is the numeric symbol of 6, and then the written, the letters 6, but then sometimes it's in an array or sometimes it's in something else. So Numtanga and Kakuma, my students will actually still do, even though they're old.
I love it. Anybody else, a game? All right. Then I am going to go back to sharing my desktop. The other thing that we talked about, Janine and I have talked about, is math talks. Janine, do you want to talk about what you love about math talks? I can leave it up here. I'm fine.
Yeah, we tote math talks as our favorite way to differentiate. So the way it works is the teacher poses a purposeful problem. So I would pick a problem that is pertinent, like preparing them for the next step in my curriculum, or reviewing a skill that we need to work towards mastery. And then the students all signal when they're ready to give a solution, and they're doing this using mental math. So they signal in a way that the teacher can see that they have an answer, but not in a way that they're dismissing everybody else, having them shut down. The teacher collects the answers orally, the students explain or defend their answer, and the teacher is recording all these different strategies from students. So the goal is to try and get as many different strategies as possible And then the teacher has time to facilitate mathematical discourse and draw connections between the different strategies that students have shared out. And then the class can come to a consensus as far as sometimes it's whether or not who had the correct answer, because sometimes you'll get multiple answers, but also which strategy is the most efficient. Is it always the most efficient strategy? How I like particularly connecting the student that had a strategy that wasn't necessarily as sophisticated as maybe the standard algorithm. And then saying, okay, can we see the connection between this standard algorithm and the student that used 10 rods and unit cubes? And just really digging deep into the conceptual understanding then.
Yeah, so we're gonna run through a math talk with you guys. So you saw it over there already. So the idea of a number talk, you're not using a calculator or anything like that. So I just want you, for those of you that have a camera, I would love for you to just do what we normally do. Put a thumb up if you have one method of solving it. If you have more than one method, if you can put multiple hands up or multiple fingers up. You only have 2 hands. And so I'm watching those of you specifically that have cameras, if you can put a thumb up when you have a solution. And more than one finger if you have more than one method. Great. I love it that we have a few methods. So can somebody just share a couple methods so that we can talk about them? Let's see. I can stop sharing so that I can see your faces again.
I'll throw in a halving and doubling strategy.
Sure. So you made it into what?
So I would have the 18 to be 9 and the double the 5 to make it 10. So 10 times 9.
Does everybody have the same method?
I would do the same thing, and I like to think of money. So I know that if I have 18 nickels, I think of it as half as many or 9 dimes.
Oh, I like that. What else?
I thought of it as 10 times 5 and then 8 times 5 and added them together. So 50 plus 40.
And that was my initial thought. And then my second strategy was 20 times 5 and then the difference of 2 times 5 minus 100. So, or, well, I'm sorry, 100 minus the 10.
Yeah. Anyone else? And this was the problem that was in the article, which I realized after the fact. But Jo Boaler on her has this talk. So let me see if this works out for her. There's all your names. So let me know if you guys can hear this and see this.
9 times 10, which is 90.
Very quiet.
90.
How did you reach it?
Well, to do it quickly, I separated it into 10 and 8. So 5 times 10 is easy, that's 50, and then 5 times 8 is 40, and then you add them together.
I feel like I should be able to answer 18 times 5 pretty quickly, but I can't. I do know it's 90. I think I'd probably do it the 18 on top and then the 5 on the bottom and then 5 times 8. Probably pretty slow.
So one thing that's nice about number talks is the...
So what I love about this one is that what I love about that one is that the kid who's doing the standard algorithm is in some ways the kid who's least fluent. And I think a lot of times we see that. Like my favorite question to ask a kid to see in my mind if they're fluent or not is to ask them 99 plus 99. And the kids that use the standard algorithm in my mind are usually not the kids that are fluent. The kids that are fluent usually do what? Sarah just said it, I think. Sarah, can you say it? Can you unmute yourself and say it?
100 plus 100 minus 2.
Right. And that's probably, if we were to experience 99 plus 99 in the real world, so to speak, that's probably what we would do. So I like to ask those kind of questions, and then that kind of lets me know if a kid is willing to think flexibly. And because in my mind, to be fluent, you have to be willing to kind of use problem-solving skills and not just one process. So I'm going to share again. I also like, if somebody was starting to talk, go ahead. No? Okay. I also use this example for those of you who do teach, if anybody's in the middle grades or even high school. I use this example a lot because I think of 99% of the teachers I know that teach basic algebra will teach that to solve this problem, you have to do what? What's the first step in always solving a problem like this?
Distribute.
Distribute, right? Every kid is going to go, and Janine told me my handwriting was really terrible, so I'm really trying for you guys because it's hard with my thing.
That's
that
so
we go
better than earlier.
That we go like this, right? But there are kids that are seeing it a different way. And what could a kid do that sees it a different way? Did anybody see it a different way? Maybe I'm the only person.
3 times what makes 21?
Yeah, 3 times what makes 21. So I know this number has to equal what?
7.
So I know x plus 2 has to equal 7. And if I want to say I divided both sides by 3, that's fine. But the idea of understanding that idea, I'm mumbling over my words, but understanding that x plus 2 equals 7 is a known quantity because we know that 3 times that number equals 21. Being able to see x plus 2 as a single number. And the Illinois Learning Standards talk about that, like being able to think about terms and factors and being able to see things that are combined sometimes as a single number. And this flexibility of being able to say this and not always follow what the teacher says, which is, the rainbow method or whatever you want to call it, is starts from that 18 times 5. It starts from those same number talks that we have earlier. So the next thing I want to look at is our IL Teach and Talk. Hey, look, the writing stayed there.
Excuse me, please?
Yeah.
Before we move on to this, that last example that you just had, the last slide, made me think of this young math teacher, I want to say on the East Coast I don't know exactly. His name is Anthony, and his site is called Mash Up Math. And it's really great logic problems using cute icons. There's always a theme. He sends them to you several times a week for free. And it's all single-digit numbers, although he does have some more advanced ones that you can purchase. But the ones that are free are all single-digit numbers, and it teaches kids problem-solving, perseverance. You don't just start on the first line. You have to start where it makes sense. And it teaches them to think flexibly about numbers.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, and I just put it in the chat, but I have something very similar. It's called openmiddle.com. And OpenMiddle is a really good resource. I use it a lot for some number talks, and like the previous speaker said, it just offers a lot of opportunity for students to think flexibly about numbers. Yep. Oh, look at you, already there.
Yeah, we had an openmiddle.com question pulled up because we think open problems are another really good way to work on fluency, allowing students to see it. I will put a plug in. I think I'm going to try to get through as many of these real quick as I can, but ilteachandtalk.org, we have PowerPoints that are ready to be used as number talks that you can click on them, and there's multiple slides, but the intention is that you're really only using one at a time, or maybe even one per day. And you can look it up if I was on the page, but I'm trying to kind of speed through right now. If I were on the page, I could click on the grade, and then it would have several standards that I could choose from. So that's a great place to get some of these. I agree with you. Open Middle is a great way to get through those, looking at problems like this. I like this problem. Is this one from Open Middle too, Janine? It doesn't have a citation on it. Is it?
It is, yes.
Okay, I'm going to add the citation right now. I like this problem. I like the idea of then sometimes giving kids the number of coins that they may have. I also was looking at how illustrative math defines fluency, and seeing what kind of examples they had on the standards that specifically had this. And one of them that I really liked was this idea of, can you guys read that? I really liked this question, because you can add in any order, but the idea of what coin do you suggest he start with? I just think it's a really, like, a question for kids to think about, right? Like, we probably as adults almost always start with the biggest number, because it's much harder to have these odd pennies than it is to wait till the end and put those in. And how it's giving students kind of those tools, like not telling, that's not necessarily a wrong answer, but kind of giving them the tools to think about that. So this is from illustrative mathematics. And this is tagged as being from, one of the fluency standards in 2nd grade. They also have one similar to this, similar to what we've been talking about, the idea of breaking those numbers apart, almost like a written form of a number talk, where they have 2 different students who added these 2 numbers different ways, and that they ask the students to look at them. I like this one also because they're kind of asking for students to reason through the different methods again, and being able to then keep both of those in their storehouse. Let's see. This is a problem that I made up like 6 years ago, I think. So looking at the difference between these 2 tasks. And my favorite conversation to have with this is, a lot of people will tell you there's only one answer. But if you allow this to be any term, even if it's a single term, there's still a second answer. If you allow the blanks to have more than one term, then there's an infinite number of answers. And I like to get the students talking and letting them ask the question of, does it have to be a number? Does it have to be, can I have more than one answer? Those kind of questions. Then they're doing more than one version of that. How many of you know Joan Barrett? Anybody? No, Joan Barrett is a wonderful woman that is retired. She lives in Southern Illinois. And she gave us this quote once: to build fluency, we should find ways for students to practice from repeated use through motivational activities. And this is one of the games that she gave us. So I want you to look through that and think about what that. So here again, we're getting into fluency of fractions. Number sense, being able to decide what, if you roll a 6-sided die versus if you have a 10-sided die, what makes a good number for the numerator, what makes a good number for the denominator, which ones would we rather not have. Take a moment to think about how you could change the game to align to the idea of rolling dice and keeping some or losing some, and how you could differentiate that game. And then I'm just going to give two more slides, and then I'm going to break out and let you guys talk anything else. This is a high school one. I believe this is from the Park Model Content Framework. I don't see the citation on this one either. Fluency in translating between recursive definitions and closed forms helps when dealing with many problems. And the reason I pulled this one up is, again, that idea of translating between forms, recognizing similarities, equivalences. That's really what we're trying to do when we're teaching fluency from very, very early in kindergarten all the way up through high school. The skills that we're learning in kindergarten help us understand equations more, help us understand how we can solve problems in more than one way. And here, Parks has an equality game formative task that I think is a great way for them to practice equal signs that isn't just simply a time test. So we only have 4 minutes left. Does anybody have any questions? Janine, I believe you've been putting all of these things, as many as you can, into the forum. Is that correct?
I've tried.
Okay. So the forum, again, is where you hopefully registered. So I'm going to put that in there so that you can, if you didn't get a chance to read all of these, that you can find the links again later. I'm also going to give you a chance to ask questions again, but I am going to put a link again to our post survey. Please take a minute to fill it out. We want to know how this format was a little different than some of the previous ones. If you could give us some feedback on that. If you haven't been here before, don't worry about that question. But also, in order for us to keep doing IL MathCom, we have to show that people are interested in this. So if you want us to keep doing it, if you have bad things to say, you should still take it. But if you want us to keep offering IL MathCom, we really need to get some feedback in our survey. So please take a moment to fill that out. When Janine has the recording, she will also send that out. Does anybody have any final words? I try to keep it pretty strict at 4:30. Or questions? All right, did you walk away with at least one idea that was different than you walked in with to help your kids? All right, I love that many people are, oh, I want to see the little one. Sarah has a little one on her lap, I'm pretty sure. Hi. All right, great then. I hope everybody has a great, if you're celebrating Hanukkah, happy Hanukkah. Otherwise, have a great break, which is soon to come up. And we hope to see you again in January. And again, please fill out our survey. Thank you. Even if you're watching the recording, you can fill out the survey, which Janine will turn off now. Thanks.
Thank you.